So we are ready. So I start. First, good evening and welcome to the sixth and last and concluding panel in our series, Revealing, Recording, Reflecting. With this, I would like to start by thanking our supporters, without which this would have never happened in the form that it took. And we are very grateful to the Khat Foundation, Center for Arabic Typography, Arab Fund for Arts and Culture, the Arab Council for the Social Sciences, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, and A to Z Presents in Berlin. Revealing, recording, reflecting. I will repeat this for those of you that have not attended any of the previous panels or that have come on this channel by coincidence or for the first time. Revealing, recording, reflecting is the name of the project. It is a speculative research on generations of women graphic designers from Southwest Asia and North Africa and the diaspora. The project uses the exhibition platform as an editorial space to collect, reveal, retell, and record the work and untold stories of women graphic designers, calligraphers, typographers, and illustrators who play key roles in shaping and rethinking visual and material culture of the region. The project was initiated by myself, Huda Abi Faris, Dr. Bahia Shahab, who is unfortunately not with us today, and Anya Lutz, who is going to be part of the discussion towards the end. We are the four main researchers, and we started the research in a sort of hybrid online and on-site panel discussion. So I am today speaking from the exhibition space. You can see some of the examples of the works behind me in A to Z Presents in Berlin. Sometimes we have also an audience with us that you can't see, but probably they will turn the camera when they start to talk. We are the four lead research people that have actually, each one of us have led, designed and initiated a panel, and I will talk more about that. And I won't introduce the panel too much because I would give them the chance to introduce themselves later. When we started this project, we've been looking at what was happening in design and design histories, and we found a lot of work. I mean, we know a lot of archiving that is taking place online, especially on Instagram. There are more, immense collections, some of them really remarkable collections of works from older generations and also from contemporary designers. So there's a sort of already this manic archiving thing happening around the world and in design as well. There's not too many exhibitions on graphic design from the region, and there's not too many publications either. And the few that are, the few exhibitions and the few books that have been published have been done by more or less the group that is actually leading this panel. There's some other people, but we are also really deeply involved in that. So this was the motivation for this project, came from looking at these trends and thinking, okay, what is needed? Is it enough to just have a few exhibitions? Is it enough to have a few books, or should we do something a little bit more substantial, a little bit more longer term? So the goals of the project, I'm just going to read them out because maybe they're very small on the screen, is to really integrate women from the Southwest Asia and North Africa in global design history discourse, to acknowledge their vital role as players and contextualize their contribution within the broader socio-political and cultural developments of the region's visual and material culture. We would like to defy stereotypes and other tropes on female identity within an Arab Islamic context by relaying untold stories and oral histories. We want to question the role of design within the complexity of feminism and gender representation in the context of Arab visual culture and design practice. And we want to explore the way identity is developed in relation to visuality and the way visual experience shape our identities. We want to reflect on the existing networks and connections across geographies, disciplines, and generations of women from the region. And finally, we want to expose and establish links between past and present design practice in the service of current educational design programs. So these ambitious goals of ours have been translated in a more speculative research. So to create a speculative research was the idea that we did not want to be, we want to contribute to the canon, but we don't want to be, the canon on design history from the region. So we wanted to have a process. There's a collective research methodology where it's open, where there's no hierarchies. And so what we did is, in this diagram, you can see we started with this idea of the exhibition as a space to collect and I will talk more about it. So it's a place for exchange, an editorial exchange place, and also a research place. We started a project Instagram page to have a kind of communication about what we are doing, and also to connect to the larger community and also invite them to contribute, which has been very successful. And then, these two things happen simultaneously, and then they feed into what we do in the panels, which we set up as sort of, ways to invite other researchers to talk about things, and they're framed within one question, which we will talk about a little bit later. And then these again are disseminated publicly, not only by being broadcast online, by also being on the Khat website blog page. And then finally, everything is going to go into a publication. Not everything, actually, sorry, I should say a selection has to go into a publication, and the publication will be more of a reflection on what we have discovered, why we were making this research. So this is a very important process for us. It is not an encyclopedia. It is not a phone book with directory of every possible designers, but it's a reflection on specificity, and with the idea that maybe it triggers more critical discourse on what we have discovered, and maybe encourage others to do the same. So the exhibition space, here's some image of it, and here's Sukaina posing sexy in front of the door. The project is, again, like I said, uses the exhibition platform as an initial editorial space to collect, reveal, retell, record the work and untold stories of women graphic designers. But also, it was also a place where people could come together, look at the work, read about it. We've collected a lot of reading things, a lot of publications that we could find about the region. And also the process was constantly growing. So people could add their notes, could give us suggestions, could come and discuss their ideas. And it grew, which was really very nice. We had, lots of groups of people visiting, and some of the most touching moments were, groups of students, German students, coming to learn about, women from the Middle East. So the space became a place to really gather information, but also, tell these stories to people that have never heard about it, that have maybe preconceived ideas of what the Middle East or what the SWANA region looks like. So the third thing that we did was just the panel discussions, and this is the last one, where we would like to kind of reflect a little about what we have done so far. So we're going to invite my co-panelists to talk about a little bit, some reflections about, what went on in their panels, and, what are the kind of ideas or conclusions that you have had. So I'm gonna just go by the alphabetical order, and regrettably Bahia Shahab is not with us today, so we cannot talk about her panel on her behalf, maybe briefly, but we leave it open to the discussion later. But I would like to invite Yasmin Nashvitaan to talk about her panel, and maybe you can just briefly introduce yourself, Yasmin, just about who you are, why you chose this topic, how you designed your panel, and so forth. So I'm going to mute myself for now.
Sure, thank you, Huda. How long do I have? Just to know, okay, so I'm just going to talk forever. Huda just said that, we're going to be reflecting and concluding. I think it's too soon to conclude. There's so much to talk about. I think these panels are I can say, a beginning of a conversation. I am not sure we can conclude. I think it's too soon to conclude, but yeah, we're going to try. So, the panel that I first, my name is Yasmin Nashvitaan, and I teach graphic design. I have been teaching for a long while. I teach at the Lebanese American University, but I am currently a visiting professor at Bilkent University in Turkey. And it has been an exciting venture to join this initiative that I believe is very important. And I will say more. And I'm sure we all agree on that. So my panel focused on women telling stories about women. And so this was the title of the panel. And I'm gonna try not to repeat what the panel was about, but maybe briefly. So the panel addressed a group of young, we call them graphic women. This is a term that Hilary Shute used. It's actually the title of her book. And I really like this title, and I think we can call them graphic women. So graphic women includes graphic design and illustrators, producers of graphic novels. And so we were interested in looking into different, visual production, if I may say. It's a bit too general, but this was a part of what the panel was about. So how graphic design and illustration cuts across issues related to politics, sociology, and of course, identity, feminism, and nation. So these were topics that were brought up through the work of the women that we've discussed in the panel. I also wanted to say, to address the challenges that I had at the beginning when we were trying to organize this panel, was that I believe that the present is an exciting time to do research about the practice of graphic design and illustration. But the difficulties, the challenge that I had was to identify researchers or people who are interested in writing about design. And I think Huda started talking about this. We do have in the SWANA region, I'm not sure if I can talk about it in general, but I am mostly talking about Beirut here, that this is an exciting moment to do this, because the practitioners are heavily really working on social issues, voicing out their concerns through their graphics. And they are, in a way, talking about concerns that are related to, political, social issues, but also taboos that we usually do not address in the sculpture related to sexuality and, of course, politics. And so these are coming out through the graphic work that they have producing. And I think this is a turning point. I can call it a turning point in the practice or the work that is being produced at this time. And I think this is a topic that was discussed in all the panels, if I may say. And so not enough writing has been produced and not enough research. And I think these panels are filling this gap of, we hope, I mean, it's a start. It's inviting more people to join and do research, analytical or critical research on the production of the practice of graphic design, specifically in the region. I also wanted to add that when I traveled to Berlin and I was in the space of the exhibition where Huda is now, there were a significant number of visitors who visited the space and were interested in the design production that looked different than what was produced in the West. And I think, and in a way, it is this is where I think designers from the SWANA region would contribute to global design, if I may say. So going back to the panel, so the panel, as I said, focused on women telling stories about women and basically discussing issues related to identity, identity, feminism, and I'm saying feminism here because one of the panelists was one of the editors of one of the first publications, a journal, a feminist journal that was established in Cairo, Shakmak. And it was a very interesting discussion where we did discuss the challenges of establishing or publishing such a publication that is not published in paper today, but it's published online. So also the opportunities that publishing or producing work online is important here. I also had so I had Dr. Azadeh Fatirad as part of the panelists, and this is where through her presentation we had this opportunity to discuss the role of print media in the at the beginning of the 20th century in Iran, but also in the region through different publications, feminist at that time publications. I had also another panelist that discussed Hala Al-Ani that discussed the translation of the way her grandmother saw Cairo. So this translation of how her grandmother and other female architects and people who worked on urbanism, and how this story or this narrative was translated through the illustrations of Nora Zaid. So this was an interesting discussion as well. And then I had Sahar Khraibani, who is based in New York and is actually writing about design in several publications in the US. And Sahar and myself, we both had gathered several designers and illustrators, female designers and illustrators from the region, young ones, and we were really interested in what is happening with the emerging designers and how the emerging designers are very outspoken through their graphic work. And this took also part of the discussion. So just to wrap up the questions that we've raised, so we were very much interested in the way these concerns are being voiced through the graphics that were produced by these women, and so how these women are using their graphic illustration practice in voicing out concerns that were political, social, and you name it. Yeah, I guess that's it for me.
I wonder, if I can ask you a question,
Sure.
Because, this is like the time to conclude things for us. I mean, to conclude, as you said, it's the beginning. It's more to conclude this phase of the research, in the sense that this is the moment to reflect on things. And I'm curious about whether you can tell something about why you chose the topic of women talking about women and having this very sort of feminist take on subject matter and visualizing and identity, but in a very feminist approach. So maybe you can explain a little bit like your interest in that topic personally as a researcher.
Sure, thank you, Huda. This idea of women telling stories about women is not a story that started off today. This is, we have a tradition of telling stories in the Arab culture, at the beginning of the 20th century, there were many journals, feminist, I can call them, maybe more feminine than feminist at that time. The term was not used, but where women used to write about other women. So I was really interested in how women bring up stories of other women. I also have to say that most of the stories at that time were about representing women as heroes. So for example, Jeanne d'Arc or Hashtarut, for example, figured in these texts, in these early texts. But the stories that we are telling about the young women today through graphics, so this was really interesting. At that time, it was writing, and today we're telling the stories visually. But also, I want to point out that the stories that we are telling today are not about heroes, but, well, they are about heroes. They're about struggling women, their struggles, their battles in recuperating or trying to, advocate for change in the way they are being treated, in the way they are asking for their human rights or being treated equally. So this was the idea of women telling stories about women. But my personal interest, well, actually, I have a book that I have worked on, this women photographer in the 1920s, where she is a Lebanese photographer. She took most of her photographs in the north of Lebanon in a village and most of the women in the photographs are active women that have leisure time, that are being active. And I thought that this was really interesting to depict women in a way that contradict the way women are being depicted in the mainstream media. I also would like to bring up my interest in locating female designers in the region. So there's also the book about Salwa Rawda, who is a renowned figure in the region, but her design or graphic design work is not well known. And so we managed with Khat Book Foundation to produce this book and put forward the design work. And by design, I mean typography, layout, not only print work, but also fashion production, product design. And we believe, when I say we, it's Khat Books and myself, that this work that is not visible should be visible. People should see. And I also want to talk about my experience in teaching. And when I bring up the topic of women designers and how, I ask students to research a female designer, and the students come up to me and say there are no female designers. And I push them into looking into the work, bring in some names to the class, sending them to interview female designers, or point out an article or a book today, now that we maybe have a few material to share with the students, which is really important and helpful in exposing the students. And it's not just about women, but it's also about women in different places around the region. Like, I would say, let's look into, I don't know, let's say Iraq. What are these women in Baghdad, or just designers in Baghdad doing? Or maybe in Syria or in other places. And the students in Beirut, this was in Beirut, they look up to me and they're like, there is no design in those countries. Of course, people are working. They had printers, they were producing at that time. And we just need to scratch a bit and try to look into the publications that were produced at that time. And yes, maybe it is difficult because the name of the designer is not on the book or on the publication, but we need to put some more effort and then we can find the information. And yes, we did work on this in class, and the students were satisfied by the end of the semester to find out that there are many designers from different places around the world that are not made visible, and that there are women designers as well that we should make visible. By we, I'm saying all of us now, not just the publishers and the authors, but we need the help of the designers and older designers. I mean, this was also another challenge in this project, that these designers that worked in the 50s and 60s in the region are unfortunately leaving us soon, if we make the math of their age. And we need to really, this is the time where we need to work on this. Otherwise, we won't have the what we call primary sources, the first interview that we did with these designers. And we know there are many, and we really need to somehow gather the information and make the information visible, accessible. And I believe that not only the text, but also the design, we need to put these images, make them accessible and visible, attractive to the students and the young generation to know. And I think in education, it's very important for the students to learn about the past, to learn about what happened in their profession before they came into the profession. I think it's important. Yeah.
Yeah, Yasmin, I think also beyond just the students, I think this is a good opportunity to just talk a little bit about what happened in the panel of Bahia, where, her panelist, Dr. Noha Abu Khatwa, really talked about, the forgotten women calligraphers in history. She took us back to the 7th century, and she mentioned a publication that was really great. And I managed to find a copy of it, which I was very happy about. It was written by the publication she mentioned was written by a Turkish calligrapher, woman calligrapher. And then I was very disappointed because a lot of the publication has a lot of text and biographies and profiles of these women, and it's quite a long list, actually, to my surprise. And it has really good stories, but very little images, which is also what Noha was talking about. Is sometimes I think that, like you said, the urgency of collecting this material is important because it disappears. And, we know with old Islamic manuscripts, they are sold by the sheet. They are pulled apart, the book, and then you lose track of who designed, who wrote it. And because that's also mentioned at the very end. And if the person is not very important, maybe it's not even preserved properly. And they are important within their own context, like Noah was talking about, and they are important that somebody else wrote a book about them, but they are not part of the general conversation. And this is a little bit where we are also in design, where a lot of women are not part of the general conversation. They are not the heroes, they are not the stars. And therefore, their work is also forgotten or just kind of goes unnoticed and eventually disappears. They are not recorded. I mean, the younger generation have an advantage, is that they have all these media and they're all kind of very good at promoting their work and showing it and putting themselves online and out there. And that's not the case with, my generation, let alone the generation older. So I think that's really important that, it's like you said, it also poses a challenge of how do we find, this information? How can we have these reliable conversations? And for example, in my panel, I was really fortunate to have Dr. Roshanak Kairobadi, who talked actually to some of these women and interviewed them. I think, Sukaina did the same. She interviewed her people that she wanted to talk about. So did Ghalia Srabi. I think these interviews are important, even though we know that, first-person interviews are not 100% information, but they give information that would not be, just mere facts, but it gives very good insight into the process of why people make things and what they think about that. And on this note of process, I would like Sukaina to talk about her panel, because she was really focused on this idea of, the human behind the work and the process and what motivates people and why and how they fit within a certain context, etc. So I think, Sukaina, you want to say something about your panel a little bit?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Huda. Thank you, Yasmin. Beautiful introduction of the work we've been doing these last weeks. I think it's really beautiful to be able to wrap up and also be able to talk about our own process during all this time. the panel behind the lines of engaged graphic designers is more about, as you said, Huda, creative process. The idea is to unveil what is going on before this final draft that is given to the public, that is published, that we see, and all the work that is hidden behind. It was a nice journey. Actually, the personal reason why I went through this perspective is my own curiosity about creative process. I believe that creativity unfolds a beautiful space of growth, personal growth. And I also believe that somehow when a work impacts people, socially impacts it, it means that there is a very beautiful space of change where the designer went through that is translated through the work and is able to impact communities. And I was very curious to know, because we don't have this kind of publications, as you said, Yasmin, and we unfortunately don't have any documentation about women graphic designers and more about their process. So I was very curious to know how they deal with themselves and they deal with the world and the inner struggles they go through, the vulnerabilities, the questioning they go through. We can see from our panels, and also it's very funny because we are tackling a region. It's Kamam, a big region with a lot of women, but the main subject that we are going through is empowering women. Like we can see that during all our talks, there is an urge for women to empower themselves and talk about their issues, to be able to transmit and translate the struggles that women is going through. We can call it feminism. We can call it also a translation of reality. And it's very interesting to see the struggle that is coming behind, the censorship, the doubts, the fear, the anxiety. And I was very glad and very humbled to dive into the wisdom of two beautiful women, Lina Haibe and Dina Muhammad, but also the third one, Sarah Rizqallah, who couldn't be among us, but who was with a huge support to unfold this space of change. I had beautiful personal interviews that unfortunately couldn't be translated through the panel. With Dina, for instance, about her creative process, her insecurities during this process, but also with Lina, who shared her vulnerability through her education, or also the struggles that she's living in her country or her many countries that she translated through her work. And I found fascinating how drawing and how image making could translate that and somehow solve it, somehow create a safe space for her to solve it with herself, but also for people to reflect on it and be able to talk about it. Image making have always been a beautiful tool of expression since like the beginning of ages in the caves, and it is still. And I would love to unfold more of this for the publication. I would love to go deeper, dig deeper, and for sure this will be through interviews, because I believe through the experience that I had with the many people I approached for the research, that this kind of thoughts, this kind of unveiling of creative process, especially for engaged work, can only be in a one-to-one approach, and then maybe in a more global one, because it is still a personal life journey, a human journey that you need to feel safe to share. Though these amazing graphic designers do share it through their work, but it is still like an outside work that never shows their faces. it's interesting. I don't know what you feel about it, Huda or Yasmin, but I love how this one person journey can affect through creativity others' journey, life's journey. I can talk more if you want, but I'm trying to make space for conversation.
No, this is good. I mean,
sorry, Sukaina, I was going to say what's exciting is that it's always interesting to see what's happening behind this, to know more what, how the work was produced. Because we are designers, we tend to assume that people know, but I think it's really interesting to look into the different stages that a design goes through before it gets to the final output.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking forward more about your panels book.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's also like, this connection between your professional journey and your life journey are often really very interconnected. And in my panel, we focused on this idea of diaspora because, of course, I am the typical example. In two cultures, belonging to two different cultures, or in my case, many more than just two, and then to kind of navigate these spaces of, uncertainty or clearness, ambiguity. But then I found those spaces to be a creative space where you can reinvent things, where you can reconsider what you are, who you are, where you come from, what you want to be, how you want to be, how you want people to perceive you. And then in my panel, it was really good as a starting point because it also opened up this idea of not only about the person and the designer, but also about what you make and how you make it. And what you decide, how you decide to change, because the context has changed, and it kind of this moment of, freedom, of being like shedding off, old skin or like preset ideas and limitations and just exploring things. And it was very nice to see, somehow it worked out in the panel where each one of us actually kind of, I didn't talk very much, but, my panelists actually talked about different regions. And it was really nice to see, the parallels between what happened with the Iranian diaspora of women designers and how they transgressed from their work from design and expanded their practices into art and fashion and other media and also non-defined media, and how they kind of explored this idea of, being the creative person, and it doesn't matter what you produce. So design became, the starting point, the basis, or graphic design, the basis for other kind of practices. And it was very nice also, like, Ghalia talking about specifically about Syria and, her journeys and the journeys of the younger generation of Syrians that are very active, using their art and their either to preserve culture, like in the work of Kindar and Noom, or to actually just write, comment about the situation, political or social situations they find themselves in. And the same way Dina talked about, the journey from Morocco into the United States, and then, being in two places and, facing challenges in two different places, more or less the same challenges, but different, different contexts. So again, this, going racism at home and racism outside. And then, it's almost like, to kind of like go full circle, we end up with Maya talking again about sexuality and, gender issues and this idea of, how people identify themselves in terms of gender and what is not allowed to be talked about and not. So it kind of loops back almost to your conversations, Yasmin. So it's really nice how, again, by talking about journeys and diaspora and exploring like these liminal spaces of in between or uncertainties, how it translates with different people, how it resonates, how they explore it to express themselves. So I found that, from at least my panel, I was really happy. I discovered, I actually discovered from all the panels something new and something touching here and there. People that I didn't know, or people that I knew, but I never thought about their work in the way it was presented in the panel. And for me, that was like a really good journey. and a journey that I hope is we're just in the beginning of it, because I feel like we need to learn more. It's kind of like addictive. We find something and then you want to find more. So we started, this project, and we had 80 women, and we thought, okay, we have, enough people. And then, as it went along, and we opened up and we asked people to submit and to send us suggestions and images and a list of people, well, mostly list of people and list of names. And we've done a lot of research collecting all these images. And we've grown from 80 to 300, and I think we can keep on going. If we want, we probably will discover more people. So it was really it's not about, a context of numbers, because, it's also really 300 very good designers. Like, it's not, so it's kind of going back to, your story, Yasmin, of saying, my students, when they think of design, they think of, the Bauhaus. We're in Germany, we can say the Bauhaus. But, they think of, I don't know, Paul Rand, or I don't know, some big name in the West. And maybe there's a few men designers in the Arab world that they can connect to, or some, famous Iranian designers that we know. But then for the rest, they don't know. And they think, and it's just, if we can only let them see that there's at least 300 people we know that are very good, that we already changed something in the story. So, the process we went through, I think, is very interesting. In the way we went about trying to connect to people, I think was very interesting. Also, the space here was really good in bringing people in to give us some, some insights, to leave notes, to make comments, to really get, like, sometimes very touching comments about the work and how, it's, again, being in diaspora, how connected it makes you feel like you're proud to be connected to your culture in some ways at a distance. So that was really, I think, a very nice process. And for those of you that couldn't come to the exhibition, I thought maybe we can just take you on a small tour of the exhibition through this video. So, so it's a quiet one. So I think Yasmin, Sukaina, you can talk over it because you were also in the space. But our idea, and thanks to Anya Luz and her great design, and thanks to Noor Asmar, our research assistant, who really, really put so much time into this, they've created a space that was really like a place to go in and to wander, to start to look and to discover more new things, and to read these little bios, and to make questions, to ask questions, to make photographs. Some people were very interested in some works, and they just thought, how can we reach these women and work with them? But also the space has this sort of like feeling of informality, and a space where, there are some publications, but that's also probably not such a bad idea to have not so many publications, because you can actually sit and read them. You don't feel like, oh my God, I'm in a library, I don't know where to start. So you can see in these images the variety of work that was compiled, and and it's only like 4 images found randomly online from the works of all these people. So I'm really curious that when we actually start to make a real book and we ask people to submit work, what exactly are they going to submit? Because they're going to submit probably a different selection or even stronger work than what we have managed to collect. So we had it kind of the exhibition plotted with like these themes that we had in our panel. So every researcher's theme suggested names, but then we build on that. We had a board that you can see here, where all the conversations like we are having now that are streamed online are recorded. They stay online, then we can, actually play them in the space, and they were being played in this space, and people could make requests and want to see one film longer, or so there was a very nice interaction. Here you see some examples of the work that were, from Bahia's panel on women of letters, where you see examples of, old calligraphers, contemporary calligraphers, performative calligraphers, type designers, typographers, people working in lettering. So anyone who had work with letters. And I think that we, as we go with this exhibition and in this research, we keep on discovering people. So by the time, we we are happy that we're stopping here, because I think there is no more walls in the gallery to fill. I mean, it's kind of starting to go on the floor. So I think it's a good moment to stop and reflect and say, okay, now what do we do with all this overwhelming and great work? And this is something that I think, you know, partly the book cannot hold these, because then it becomes a phone book. So we were thinking of, you know, trying to think of a longer term thing where, you know, some of these readings, some of these articles, some of these publications, some of this work becomes sort of material for a kind of online archive that could be a little bit of it on Instagram, because we have an Instagram page we would like to keep populating and let it grow. But we also have a blog on the Hut website to kind of add this information. And maybe, you know, it becomes, I mean, all these things, what is important is also these interviews can become sources that are placed online, of course, with the permission of the people interviewed. So they become, all these platforms can be kind of connected and can be present and can be free and open for everybody to use, because bringing publications from one place to another is always tricky. Sometimes, you know, we have touchy material that we will publish and then maybe it gets, you know, I don't know, banned or censored somewhere or whatever. So I think having an online life is really important, but also having something printed is equally important, because that's also something that ensures, you know, a stable longevity. And I hope that, you know, we only just started this project, and I think that we will, you know, the publication will be just the beginning of something that we'd like to ask you to really be part of it, and tell us if you are interested in participating. How would you like to participate? Can we, you know, if you want to be part of the book, send us an email. So these are questions. I thought I would give you a poll with the questions. So I'm going to launch it, and I want to give you a time to just like answer it if you can. We're not a very big group, so, but it would be nice if you can just answer some of these questions. They're very simple. And while you do that, we can go to the next slide.
Huda, I wanted to take the poll, but it says
you're not allowed. You're a panelist.
You're a panelist, you're not allowed. But you know, it's kind of getting there. Are we getting some answers? Come on, 50% are teachers, 67% are academics. And I look at me, I misspelled academics. Forgive me, forgive me.
It's a typo.
Should be sent back to school. Oh dear. I think it's my bad glasses. Okay, well, we got some answers. So there's 50%, there's 40%, now it's getting less. Oh, students, now there's students. 50% students, 30% academics, 30% professionals, and 14 other. I wonder what are the others doing. The numbers keep going. I think everyone hasn't answered yet. Come on, 7 out of 11 participants have answered. Okay. Would these talks use, 71% thinks that these talks would be really useful for academics. Wow, 57% said there was more than 10 inspiring moments. That's good. Should the research continue? Wow, 100%. Yes, that's a good, that's a good boost. We totally agree. It should continue. Are you interested in contributing to this research? 21% are. So we are really on good track. Thank you very much for taking the time to answer our poll. Okay. And here I want to just thank everybody that really should be named and thanked properly. So I want to start by our patron, project patron, which is Dr. Nada Shabout. And Nada is a professor of Islamic art and architecture history in the University of Texas. And she really supported the project from the start, and she's an inspiration. She's done amazing scholarship on the history of design and art, well, mostly art in the region. I also want to thank the people who have lent us books and sent us lists of names and suggestions, and I'm going to name them one by one, so please bear with me. Of course, Khat Books and A to Z Presents, but also Noor Asmar, Ben Wittner from Ben Wittner, Golnar Kat Rahmani, Yulia Meir, Kinda Ghannoum, Yasmin Nashvitaan, Roshana Kairobodi, and the numerous visitors and attendees. And also I want to thank all the panelists that have joined us throughout this time. These were long and intense panels, and thank you so much for your contribution to Dr. Azadeh Faterat, Sahar Khreibani, Hala Alani, Shakmak, Dr. Noha Abu Khatwa, Yara Khuri Namour, Basma Hamdi, Lina Ghaibi, Dina Muhammad, Roshana Kairobodi, Ghalia Al-Sabi, Dina bin Ibrahim, and Maya Moune. And thank you in advance to all of you who will be submitting work for inclusion in the book and for answering questions and our questions and survey, because we plan to send you a survey and hope you can take a few minutes to answer it, because it would be really helpful for us. And a big thank you to our audience tonight. It's a small and cozy audience, but it's really, I want to ask you to put your questions in the chat, and if you would like to ask your question in person, then tell me so in the chat, and I will make you visible and audible to all of us. And special thanks to those that managed to attend most of the talks. Like I said, they were intense and long. And with those of us tonight, and for this concluding panel, I would love to hear your questions, your talks. And for later, if you want to join our project or send us comments or, critical or friendly emails, whatever you like, please send it to the project email. The first, I don't know if it's case sensitive, but the first R in revealing should be a capital R. I'm sorry, I'm just terrible with typing. So with this, I want to open the floor for us to talk to each other. So I want to know if anybody has questions. So it says, many thanks for creating, from Roshanak, for creating this wonderful collective research and conversation. Looking forward to a start of a productive collaboration. Thank you, Roshanak. We have another message from Lara Bella. Glad I got to catch this last one. The exhibit looks amazing. Well done. Thank you. Thank you to Anya as well. I think, Anya, you can come and sit next to me if you want to be part of this conversation. Sure. So we can, I will unplug my ears, headphones. Okay, so here we are. So this is Anya Lutz, the wonderful designer and our host, very generous host. So I wanted to know whether you guys have questions. It would be really good to have some questions finally from the audience. So please be courageous. Or do we ask you questions only? Do you want to add something?
I want to add something. I want to really thank everybody who was involved in making this. I mean, to the wonderful panels, which I thought were so inspiring. And of course, also to Noor, maybe she'll also appear somewhere, who's really been here collecting all the amazing research. Yeah. And, who attended this space and who welcomed all the visitors and engaged with them. And that's been really great.
That's Noor.
So it's been really an interesting experience for me also. It's the first time we've really had an exhibition here that
Get a chair.
I'm very glad and very grateful that we had the opportunity to show graphic design work that kind of adds another layer and another perspective to the predominantly Western design that we showed so far. So I think that's really been an interesting, opening up the discussion, including different voices, different opinions, different ways of working. And I really very much appreciate that kind of broadening of a horizon for me personally. And I think also for a lot of people who came here and who looked at all the collected names and research on the wall. And I've also been very touched by a few visitors we had who were really, and this is maybe a layer I hadn't really taken into, I hadn't really kind of realized before, because I think I always looked at it from my perspective, thinking like, how can we also broaden the discussion for local people here, be they German or from other places, to kind of learn more also about the variety and the richness of graphic design coming from the SWANA region. But I kind of hadn't really taken into consideration what it means to some people who came here, who are of background, be it in the Arab world, be it in the SWANA region or in other areas outside of the Western European American context, and how much it meant to them. And we had a few emails, a few feedback from people who really felt that creating a space that makes it visible, that the design context is broader, and that there are so many different people from other areas, and to kind of give that a visibility here in the center of Berlin, and how much that meant to some of these people who are also from different backgrounds, different cultures, different parts of this world. And this is something that really touched me a lot. And I'm glad that, we had the chance here to provide a space that kind of accommodates these different voices and people and wonderful women from the SWANA region. So that's really great. Thank you all very much.
There's a question. We have a nice question. Thank you, Bayan, for your question. Bayan asks, well, thank you. She thanks us. I'm really enjoying these talks. My question is, did the exhibition include any Kaliji designers? And if not, why? Yes, we have people from the Khalij. We have designers from the Khalij.
Hala Ani, sorry, is based in Dubai.
Hala Ani is from the Khalij, yes.
And we have several names.
Tulip as well.
No, I think there are some designers from the Khalij. There are some designers from Kuwait, from Iraq, from the UAE, from Saudi Arabia. So there are designers. I think the biggest challenge is not to find designers from all the different regions, because there are. It's the older generations of designers from these regions that are more challenging for us. And that's also, I think, why we invite all of you to kind of contribute like stories about, your grandmothers, your mothers, your mother's mothers, people that that have been involved, even if they were involved in design that is in your eyes more traditional, still it is design. I think we should talk about that, and we should show that work. So Bayan, if you know of older generation Saudi women, please write about them, okay? The young generation is easy to find. More good questions? Yeah, sure. We have a question in our audience, but you can't.
I was curious to know why you decided to do the exhibition in Berlin and why you having the conversations in English.
Good questions and difficult ones. Well, the second one is easy to answer. We have the conversations in English because, like we said from the beginning, we want it to be an inclusive project. So we want people to understand. Of course, you can't be 100% inclusive. So maybe we do exclude some people, like if you don't speak English. But the majority of the young generation and in the Arab world do speak English to a certain level. And it's important that this project is not, it's not us talking to ourselves, but talking, it's about putting the work out into the world. But I think it's important that it also exists in the national language. And it's hard to do that on a panel, to have translations. It's already very long, but we will do that in the publication. So the book will be in 2 languages. It will be English and Arabic, because it's important to write in the national language. And also because Then we have also people from Iran, so we have another language, a third language on top. But I think that it's important for especially the older generation, where they actually, like Yasmin was talking about, all these publications, or Azadeh was talking about all these publications that were in the national language, in Persian and Arabic. So I think it's important to also cater to an older generation, because we write about their work, we should also write in their language. Now, why is it in the space in Berlin? Why? Why did we do it in Berlin? Because we love Berlin. No, because of Anya, actually. Because I wanted to do it with Anya. It's and if she had been living in Timbuktu, it would have been in Timbuktu, I think.
Yeah, maybe just to kind of go back to kind of where the idea, I mean, we had been in touch, in fact, thinking about how we could possibly collaborate on graphic design here, since A2Z is a space on experimental graphic design. But my wish was to really kind of opening up to a lot of different kind of cultures and writing systems, etc. So we had been in touch for quite a while.
Yeah.
And then there was another, so that shows how important online panels are and can be. There was an online panel. Was it organized by Futuress, I think?
Yeah, it was by Futuress.
Bahia was talking on the panel. So Bahia, who also did one of the panels here on typography, you were in the audience, I was in the audience, and Bahia had talked about how difficult it was for her big book on Arabic graphic design to find women, or how much longer it takes to find them, and there weren't enough women included. So someone literally, I think it sparked in that moment that the three of us said, why don't we, make this really the focus of a collaboration and look into, create a, bring this here, create a research and look into, and broaden that research that also Bahia had mentioned needed more attention and more time to dedicate.
Yeah, and
it's also
the idea of the book. I'm sorry if I may add. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking, we're aiming global. I mean, it's a discussion of, local, global, local voices that are made visible and that are reaching out to the global. And Berlin is a cosmopolitan place. And of course, with, Anna wanting to being nice and hosting this exhibition, but I'm also thinking about the book. The book it's going to be selective work of the exhibition. And in a way, it's going to be kind of like a touring exhibition in the book, like we can think about the book. I mean, we're thinking out loud about this book that is coming out, that is, like when Anya was speaking and Huda was speaking, I'm thinking about the content of the book and how important the book is, because the panels, yes, they are online, we can see them again, but the book materializes this whole project. And it's not going to be easy, because the book in a way will be defining this identity that we're talking about, will be redefining modernity in terms beyond the West, will be, exposing, or this is an opportunity for us to share a new vocabulary that is representative of what we call a local voice, if we may, call it a local visual voice. Yeah.
I mean, it's also like this idea of the book. I mean, if you walk into this exhibition, the first when we had the first opening, somebody said, "Oh, so this is going to be the book," because it looks like it's already pages of a book, and we said, "Well, that's an idea. We just pull it off the wall and put it in." No, we're going to work seriously on it. But I think the idea of the book is also, again, not just a collection, but it's more about. We were just thinking about, what kind of essays, what kind of text should it be, just, the idea is not to make an academic book in the sense of like writing a history book, but to really keep this openness and this kind of like exploring the different ways of, writing. Maybe it's part interviews, maybe it's shorter stories, maybe it's profiles, maybe it's a combination of all these things. And so this is, again, having a physical space to look and think about, when you look at this wall and you think, well, maybe, this work belongs here better. And so this kind of being able to visualize what this content is going to be was really important. And yeah, we're very happy that we have a space to do this, because normally you don't, And even if you were designing a book like this, you're not going to fill up your whole studio or your whole walls. Maybe I should from now on, but it's quite something. So it's really nice to see. We have one last question, which is talking
I was about to say that. Would you consider continuing the research?
I think
publishing
Habiba
more?
Shair asks, would you consider continuing the research, publishing more than one book? Yeah, what do you guys think? Should we make lots of books or just one book? Let's start with one book, Habiba, and then if we think it's not enough and we have too much material, then maybe we should make more than one book. Yeah. And maybe you can also join us in collaborating on this, because I know you are doing some research on this. Do you want to talk? I don't see her in the, maybe she's already not here. I don't know, she's shy. Okay.
Yeah, maybe I would just like to ask one last question to Noor. Since Noor, you've been here now for 3 months in this space, or 2.5 months, attending, welcoming people, researching all that. How was that experience?
It was really nice, like getting to know because I had so many different conversations with the people that came in, each one from different backgrounds, some that were designers, some that wanted to collaborate with these people. They were really interested. So this was my favorite part of my 3 months here, getting to know the people that come in. I also discovered many new designers that I hadn't heard about before, and many that I knew, and I really liked seeing how the wall kept growing and growing. We started with a specific number, and now all the walls are full. So yeah, thank you.
She was wonderful to work with. Just in short, wonderful. She could put up with all our crazy requests, and I think that this project would have never worked without her. So we're really very grateful, and we want to thank whoever is in the audience. If you've ever been a student at AUB or teaching at AUB, thank you for producing such good designers and wonderful, hardworking students. Okay, a little bit of commercial break here. All right. Well, I think it's time to have some champagne now. Yeah. So cheers, guys. And keep in touch. Please write and please send us all your thoughts, good or bad. And we love criticism. We love to improve this project. It's an ongoing thing. And we want to continue, and we won't continue as well without your support and your collaboration. So thank you very much, and thank you, Sukaina and Yasmin. And sorry, Yasmin, we're kind of like ruining your holidays here with this with this hard work.
Send us some champagne. We need some champagne on the other side of the world.
Okay. Come over. Okay. Good night, and thank you very much, everyone. And we hope to hear from you again soon, and we keep you informed about our next moves on our Instagram page and so on. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.